Hello, good evening. Welcome to the programme. Here are the main headlines this Friday evening. Behind bars 7 years each after one of the North-East's biggest ever drug seizures. Stub it out. Plans to ban smoking in public places throughout the North-East. Plate Day. We are live at Gosforth Park to preview the prospects for the Northumberland Plate meeting.
And why some important clues to life in medieval times nearly went down the drain.
Two men have been jailed after one of the largest ever drug recoveries by Northumbria Police. Drugs with a street value of almost £1.5 million were seized by officers following a 5-month surveillance operation. Lawrence Flanagan and Paul Turner from Newcastle were both jailed for 7 years after admitting conspiracy to supply drugs. Sarah Gatenby was in court.
This was the haul of drugs destined for the streets of Newcastle had Operation Bobbin not been a success. Following a 5-month surveillance operation by Northumbria Police, cannabis resin, cannabis plants, amphetamine and cocaine with a total street value of £1.4 million were found at 3 addresses in Walker. Operation Bobbin centred around the criminal activities of 39-year-old Paul Turner of Fenham and 36-year-old Lawrence Flanagan of Walker, who was believed to be involved in the receipt, storage and distribution of drugs. It culminated in police searching 2 properties rented by Flanagan on Grace Street in Walker and a nearby lockup, in which officers found the drugs concealed in underfloor cavities and hidden chambers.
I'm quite sure that the drugs would have been supplied in Newcastle and Tyneside area. This recovery has had a major impact in disrupting the criminal networks. I think the important point is that for everybody to realise that these major drug dealers live within our communities, and if anybody out there has any suspicions about anybody who's dealing in drugs, then they should not hesitate to contact the police.
Today at Newcastle Crown Court, both men pleaded guilty to the charges of conspiracy to supply Class A and B drugs. In mitigation, the court was told that Turner was not and could not be the brains behind anything, let alone this operation. He was described as a simple, hard-working family man who'd foolishly been caught up in the more sophisticated criminal activities of others. Flanagan was said to be genuinely sorry for his part in an operation for which he'd been recruited by powers that he was still too afraid to name. But Judge Beatrice Bolton said that she had no doubt this was a professional distribution and that both men were close to the top end. Both men were jailed for 7 years. A third man, Harry Perry, is also due to be sentenced after admitting conspiracy to supply Class B drugs. Sarah Gatenby, North East Tonight, Newcastle Crown Court.
Plans are being drawn up to ban smoking in all public places across the region. Under the proposals, tough new controls would be introduced on exactly where people can and can't light up. Initially, restaurants, pubs and clubs in Northumberland and Tyne and Wear will be targeted, but they say the long-term aim is to eventually make smoking socially unacceptable throughout the region.
The number of adults who smoke in the North East is higher than the national average, and health experts say the number of smoking-related diseases here matches that figure. That's why they're trying to persuade people to kick the habit. Northumberland Tyne and Wear Strategic Health Authority has drawn up a 10-year plan to set up an office for tobacco control. It would have the authority to push through strict controls, possibly through local bylaws, on where people can light up. They'll start off by targeting workplaces, restaurants, pubs and clubs, but it could result in a ban in all public places.
Over time, what we've hoped to do is build up more and more voluntary smoke-free bans in local places, more and more public places where people agree not to have smoking. We're not trying to impose anything on the population. We're trying to build public support for doing this, and we have no intention of trying to impose bans the public doesn't want.
For those who don't smoke, like myself and my family, I think it's bad for you. You know, you can get certain diseases and such, and it's not very sociable, to be honest.
I think there's enough places where it's no smoking to not have to make everywhere no smoking.
They don't like smoking, stay at home, drink at home.
Do you smoke?
No, but I know a lot of people who do, and I don't have a problem with it.
What we want is for people to start thinking about what kind of a North East they'd like. And I believe that actually the people in the North East would like to see one that's a healthy environment for their children to grow up in.
Health experts are hoping to launch the project by the end of the year. They've already won the support of other local health authorities and business groups and are hoping to secure a further £5 million of European funding. Leslie McNish, North East Tonight, Newcastle.
Well, joining us now from our London studio is Simon Clark from the Freedom to Smoke group Forest. Good evening, Mr. Clark.
Good evening.
Presumably you're against this initiative.
Well, we would support any initiative that educates people about the health risks of smoking, and clearly we don't want to see children smoking. I think the problem with this type of initiative, though, is that they basically want to coerce people not to smoke. And they use bully boy tactics. For example, they want to ban smoking in all pubs and restaurants. Now, that simply is against the business interests of those pubs and restaurants, which are private businesses. And then again, they use a lot of tactics which are simply wrong. They claim, for example, that smokers are costing the country a fortune. It's not the case, it's the other way round. Through tobacco taxation, smokers make an enormous contribution to public services.
Well, yeah, but the prime aim is to cut down on the numbers of cigarettes smoked in the region and the toll on its health. Don't you think that's worth it?
Well, I think the problem is a lot of these initiatives tend to be counterproductive. We've seen that with tobacco taxation, which under this government has risen to exorbitant levels. And of course, all it's done is to encourage criminal gangs to smuggle in millions of cigarettes, which are now freely available on street corners. That's in fact why so many children smoke these days, because cheap cigarettes are freely available.
Well, okay, but anything which can cut down on deaths and illness and to the cost to the health service you mentioned before, caused by smoking, must be a good thing, surely.
Well, again, I totally support anything that educates people about the health risks of smoking. But I have to say, there cannot be a sane adult in the United Kingdom who doesn't understand about the health risks of smoking. And to spend millions more of taxpayers' money on repeating the same old thing, I think it'll be counterproductive. In fact, where children are concerned, I think they will rebel even more, because if you continually tell people not to do something, they'll simply go and do the opposite.
Now, you're a non-smoker, I believe. Surely you'd prefer to eat at a smoke-free restaurant or pub?
Well, I believe in choice. I personally have never been, I've never had a problem with people smoking around me, but I totally accept there are some non-smokers who do. So therefore, what this is all about is choice. I would love to see more smoke-free areas, so non-smokers have more choice. But we must remember that pubs and restaurants are private businesses. Therefore, it's up to the publican and to the restaurateur to choose a policy on smoking that best suits his business.
Mr. Clark, many thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Tributes have been paid to 3 servicemen from the region who were among a group of military policemen killed in Iraq. The 6 men were shot dead in an attack on a police station in the south of the country. Today, the soldiers were remembered at a cathedral service which was already planned to mark the 200th anniversary of the barracks where they trained.
This service at Chichester Cathedral on the south coast was supposed to have been a happy occasion, but uppermost in the thoughts of the congregation would have been the 6 soldiers who were killed earlier this week. Even so, it was seen as appropriate to go ahead with the service.
Amidst the sadness which we feel, we can and should continue to give thanks to God, just as we had planned. But of course, we add a heartfelt thanksgiving for the lives and the service of these men. And we remember in our prayers their loved ones and their comrades.
Among the men who died was 24-year-old Corporal Paul Long, who was originally from South Shields. The others were Corporal Simon Miller, who was 21 and from Washington, and 23-year-old Lance Corporal Benjamin Hyde, who came from Northallerton. Investigations are underway to discover how and why the violence erupted in Al-Majar Al-Kabir.
I'm sitting here at the other end of the telescope back in UK, and I don't know what went on there, but it's apparent that there was a problem out there. These 6 men gave their lives tragically in the service of the country, and I can't but doubt that they died courageously.
The congregation at the Thanksgiving service were reminded that the motto of the Royal Military Police is "We lead by example." This, they were told, is exactly what the 6 men were doing when they died. Helen Ford, North East Tonight.
The country's most senior doctor has been in the region today to discuss how the health service can be made safer for patients. Professor Sir Liam Donaldson, the Chief Medical Officer, has been at a conference in Newcastle to discuss the quality of services available to patients on the NHS and what can be done to make sure that people's health care isn't jeopardised by unnecessary errors.
We've got to get away from a culture of blame and retribution where if something goes wrong, somebody is immediately suspended and punished. Because if we do that, then people will never admit their mistakes and they'll be driven underground. What we've got to recognise is that when things go wrong, they're a source of learning. And if we learn effectively, then the learning that we do won't just be an academic exercise, it'll actually benefit patients and save lives.
More than 100 children and parents have staged a noisy protest against plans to close their school. Proposals were put forward last week to shut down Usworth School and move pupils to other schools in the Washington area. Sunderland City Council says it has to do something to deal with the growing problem of surplus places. But protesters say the authority hasn't thought the plans through.
What do we want? When do we want it? What do we want?
The message was coming across loud and clear about what Usworth School pupils, past and present, think of plans to close it down.
I think it's disgraceful that they're shutting the school down.
Why?
Because we all love it here and it's got the best school in Washington.
My mum went here and I went here, so I wanted my kids to go.
The school is open till 9 o'clock every night for activities after school, you know. So it's the heart of the community.
But the problem, as Sunderland Education Authority sees it, is Usworth School has room for 1,000 pupils. Because of falling numbers of children, only 600 come here. During the protest organised by the students, a 2,000-name petition against closure was handed to the city's education director, who denied claims local views were being ignored.
That's simply not true. We've had public meetings at the school, as you know, in the last week, so we were there in person from the very first. Equally, this is a long process in law. People sometimes feel it's too long, but no decisions are finally made until the end of the year.
However, for parents whose children have already been through reorganisation of primary schools, more closure threats are a step too far.
Many of the Year 7 children have already gone through this last year, and it's very unsettling, I feel, in their education. We don't really want them to have to go through this again unnecessarily.
People at Washington School, for instance, who aren't affected directly by this closure, but will be affected by the number of pupils that will be transferred from this school to theirs, it's going to increase their class sizes, so they're concerned about it as well.
Protesters are planning many more demonstrations in the months to come. Dave Goldring, North East Tonight, Washington.
Some of the region's bravest children have been recognised in a special ceremony. The Pride of South Tyneside Awards focuses on people who've made the borough a better place and fought against the toughest of odds. Tyne Television sponsored one of the categories, the Child of Courage Award. From South Tyneside, Jonathan Hill has this report.
The event at the Customs House in South Shields was about people who'd gone that extra mile to make South Tyneside a better place. One of the categories was Child of Courage. Tyne's managing director Margaret Fay read out the 4 nominations, but the judges decided they were all winners. One of the children was Corey Deans from South Shields. Diagnosed with a brain tumour 2 years ago, he's been through surgery, chemotherapy and needs growth hormones.
Seen him get back to school with his friends, him watching his friends playing football when he can't, playing on a 2-wheeler bike when he can't, he just needs a 3-wheeler now. Just little things like that, trying to get him back into normality.
Are you going to go home a very proud lad?
Yeah.
You're going to show your trophy to everyone?
Yeah.
We could not separate them. When we read all of the nominees and the room was awash with tears, these are real heroes.
7-year-old Rebecca Ty is another child for whom life has been cruel. She fell off a balcony while on holiday, fractured her skull and was left paralysed down one side.
She used to be a very healthy child, and now she has to live for her rest of her life with disabilities and also maybe some sort of education problem.
Hello, little Annabelle. Aww.
So what do you think about tonight, Rebecca?
It was a great night. Super one.
Well, now what's on, and a look back at the glory days of the Tube. But first, a sneak preview of the latest Dickens blockbuster. Here's Sam Ross.
Are you at home?
Yes.
To anybody?
Yes.
To the tax gatherer?
No.
Inspired by Teesdale, Nicholas Nickleby is a story of family, cruel school systems, and cold-hearted manipulation.
Our father, your brother, had a noble heart.
Which beats no more.
Amongst an A to Z of prestigious actors, Newcastle-born actor Charlie Hunnam plays the lead in this ever-relevant Dickens story.
I think that it's probably more relevant today than when it was written, because I don't think the world's getting any better as time goes on, you know? I don't think people are learning to respect and, you know, cherish each other anymore.
Do you fear Squeeze might come again?
Despite Charlie's high-flying life in LA, he still holds great memories of his Newcastle roots.
Speak of it and let me help you if I can.
My life was going great in Newcastle, you know, I had a bunch of friends and, you know, I was popular with the girls, everything was going well. And then I got moved to the Lake District, and although it's only 60 miles away, Newcastle just is definitely a lot more cosmopolitan.
Nicholas Nickleby is released in cinemas across the country this weekend and is rated PG. Cabaret superstar Kim Criswell performs with the Piccadilly Dance Orchestra at the Theatre Royal tonight. Kick in the Dust is a country music festival this weekend at Haining Farm in Wark near Hexham. Raby Castle near Darlington is the venue for a vintage car and vehicle rally this Sunday. The Seaton Delaval Pantomime Association are holding their auditions for their 31st Christmas pantomime, Dick Whittington, on the 29th of June. Some of you might remember this performance by Herbie Hancock on the Tube nearly 20 years ago. Herbie, now in his 60s, is still pushing back the boundaries of jazz music. If you missed him in '84, then there's a rare opportunity to catch Herbie and his quartet in Newcastle City Hall on Wednesday the 2nd of July. And if you've got an event that you'd like us to mention, then please just write to this address.
Time for sport now, and tonight we're looking ahead to the biggest day in the region's racing calendar. Simon's up at High Gosford Park. Any tips, Simon?
Oh, not personally, but I know a man who can help, Mike. We'll be getting the lowdown on the Northumberland Plate from our man Doug Moscrop in a couple of minutes. But earlier this week, Doug went to meet one of the characters involved in tomorrow's big race. Now, Melton trainer Tim Easterby is attempting to do something that his father and Peter never achieved in his long and distinguished career. That's win the Northumberland Plate. Not only that, if Bourgeois succeeds, Easterby will have saddled a major race winner on 3 consecutive Saturdays.
This is Dazzling Bay. He put up a dazzling display to win the William Hill Trophy at York 2 weeks ago. This is Fair Jag. He shared the spoils in the Wokingham Stakes at Royal Ascot last Saturday. And this is Bourgeois. He'll be attempting to complete a remarkable Saturday big race hat-trick for Hapton Grange trainer Tim Easterby. The 6-year-old was bought 2 years ago for 56,000 guineas on behalf of County Durham owner Charlie Stevens to try and win the Northumberland Plate. The gelding has had more than language problems since arriving in North Yorkshire from France, and his trainer is ruing the fact that the horse surprised them when winning on his first run of the season at Haydock.
I don't think I've done a real clever job, actually, because he should have about £7 less. But I think he'll have a very good chance. I still think he's on a handicap mark where he can win, but it was, you know, for a big race like this, you want a few pound in hand, really.
An owner for 12 years, Stevens has had 78 winners under both codes, but we'll be happy to give them all up, just to win the Plate.
It's a race I would love to win. In fact, I would rather win this than the Derby.
Would you?
I would, indeed. I really would.
Why is it so special to you?
I'm a North East lad. It's a North East race, and we would just love to win it. My wife would love it. We'd all love it. The maximum I've ever put on one of my horses is £25 each way. So I'm not a gambling man.
So
But I wouldn't let a horse go off without having something on him.
So when it comes to Saturday, Bourgeois, will you have the maximum on?
I'm going to have £50 each way on him. And my wife will have £25 each way on him.
It just happened another Vista Bison's Jonathan Gill was around, proudly showing off his trophy after the success of his Fair Jag at Royal Ascot.
There you are, Charlie. That's what it's like to win a trophy.
That's winning. But I'm going to get a plate instead of a cup. But this cup will stand on the plate.
Good luck to you. Thanks, Jonathan.
There you go.
Well, the man himself, Doug Musgrove, is here. Bourgeois, Doug, is that the one you're tipping?
I'm going for it. You know, it's 10 years since the North last won the plate. That was high flying in the centenary year. He's got plenty of weight, but he's been trained for the race. The conditions are right for him, the trip should be right for him. I expect him to run a big race. There's a horse called Big Moment. It could be a big moment for his trainer, Amanda Perrott. She won the race last year with Bangalore. And the big moment for Pat Edry, who rides the horse. Pat, of course, announced his retirement this week. He's been one of the most successful jockeys of all time. He's won the plate once before on a horse called Philoctetes when he was a £5 claiming apprentice. I think Big Moment, unlucky in the Chester Cup, got a big chance. It'd be nice if Northumberland could win the Northumberland plate. There's a horse trained at Cornwall in Tweed called Sunbird, trained by Dick Allen, and I think he's a good each way bet at 16 to 1, but Bourgeois is first choice.
Now, just give us an idea of how big a day this actually is for the regions racing and for this course.
Oh, it's a huge day. It's the Epsom Derby and Royal Ascot all thrown together as far as the juries are concerned. And it's getting better and better every year. The status of the race is bigger and better. £101,500 to the winner, you know. And, you know, they're coming in their thousands tomorrow. They've sold out in the club enclosure, which is now called the Premier enclosure. They've sold out in advance. And it will be a record crowd tomorrow. And the quality of the racing is wonderful. I mean, trying to find winners tomorrow is nightmare.
You can see there's already a buzz about the place for tonight's meeting. Do you personally enjoy occasions like tomorrow?
Well, I do, because all the hard work's over for me, you know. But tonight, you just get a sense of what's happening tomorrow, because there's a great atmosphere. And tomorrow, you can close your eyes. I could close my eyes and tell you what a great day. It's that special.
Doug, thank you very much. Always a pleasure, as always. Well, there's a couple of other bits of sport to look at tonight. And the football world, of course, is still coming to terms with the tragic death of Mark Vivian Foe. And Middlesbrough boss Steve McLaren has today joined those paying tribute to the Cameroon international. McLaren said he was an excellent footballer who was on his list of possible transfer targets for next season. The Borough boss went on to say that everyone at the club was shocked and stunned by Foe's sudden death in France last night, and their thoughts are with his family and friends. And on to cricket now, and Durham left their secret weapon on the sidelines today as they took on the touring India A team. But the world's fastest bowler still had his hands full. Shoaib Akhtar met some of Durham's younger supporters for the first time since signing on at the Riverside. But while the world's fastest bowler was being put through his paces on the sidelines, his new teammates were getting a rough ride out on the pitch. The home side elected to field, bad decision that. India A are 275 for 3 at the close of play. Meanwhile, Yorkshire are in championship action at Taunton. Somerset are 212 for 9, and that's after losing their first 6 wickets for just 64. Of course, the big event of the weekend is here tomorrow. It's the Northumberland Plate, and I have in my hand the really important information. It is Mosscrop's tips. The banker is number 5. Sea Storm, and that goes in the 425 at Newcastle, and the money spinner is number 2, Bourgeois, in the 250 at Newcastle. That's the Northumberland Plate. That's all from us here. Mike, back to you in the studio.
Thanks a lot, Simon. Archaeologists are hoping to make some fascinating discoveries about medieval life at one of the region's ancient abbeys. Instead of excavating tons of earth, they're using some of the latest video technology. But it's the area the experts are examining that may come as a surprise. They're getting the lowdown on a sewer. Here's Jonathan Morrell.
You'd think that archaeologists and historians would know everything that was worth knowing about Rievaulx Abbey in North Yorkshire. It was abandoned in the 1500s, and ever since then, clues have been unearthed about how the monks lived here. But there's one area that hasn't been seen by human eyes for 500 years. It's this, a retorta, or sewer.
The secrets of this medieval drain behind me might have lain undiscovered had it not been for 2 American tourists who last summer walked all the way along here as far as they could and they discovered a 16th century jug. And it was then that English Heritage decided to investigate further.
These pictures were taken by a special camera, able to get into the narrowest parts of the drain. But what on earth, apart from the obvious, would you find here?
And a lot of organic material, such as sort of fruit, and seeds and residues, and possible human parasite material from human fecal material has survived in those sediments.
From these samples, scientists at York University are able to work out what the monks ate and what sort of illnesses they suffered from.
We're able to do a lot more investigations and non-intrusive investigations and build up quite a big picture. We can sort of begin to sort of flesh out the sort of bare bones of the information that we already have about how the monks were living their lives here.
The Abbey is holding a special archaeology day this Sunday when they'll be explaining more about this discovery. It just goes to show that monks had the same habits as the rest of us. Jonathan Morell, North East Tonight, Revo Abbey.
Time for us to go. We're back on Monday at 6. Have a good weekend. Good night.